Don't tell me that the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass. Hello and welcome to Shining Moon episode 20. I'm your host, Deborah L. Davitt. Today we'll turn away from genre concerns to get into the nuts and bolts of independent publishing. Joining me today are science fiction writer Abby Goldsmith and dark erotica author Cassie Alexander. Cassie Alexander is the author of the Bend Her, Break Her, and Make Her, Dark Beauty and the Beast fantasy romance stories, and many other dark paranormals. I understand that she lives with her husband, some cats, and approximately 1 million succulents as well. Hi, Cassie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, awesome. I'm so glad to be here, Deborah. I can't wait.
It's a delight to have you. We've known each other online for a long time, so it's a wonderful time to be able to speak with you directly and get to know you in person, as it were. Abby Goldsmith has a subversive, dark sci-fi novel series of 6 books from Podium, starting with Majority. She has directed games for Nintendo, and her series gained an audience on Wattpad and Royal Road. Goldsmith has lived on all 3 coasts of the U.S. and currently lives with her favorite reader in the middle of Texas. Find her at abbygoldsmith.com/majority. Hi, Abby. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure having you. I was very excited when I found somebody who I could match up with Cassie in terms of this particular subject matter, because I started off as basically independent publishing, and I didn't do a very good job of it. So I wound up doing a lot of short fiction instead to try and engage and increase my audience and that sort of thing. And that hasn't really happened. So I wanted to pick your guys' brains and learn from you today. And maybe other people will get to learn something too. It'll be really cool. All right. So finding your niche. We've got people here who do dark paranormal erotica. We have people here who do lit RPG. We've got people out there doing progression fiction, heroic epics, everything like that in terms of the independent publishing industry. How do you find your niche? How do you find your audience? How do you wind up building your audience away from a couple of dedicated readers to a wider and wider publishing empire? And we're going to just start with simply finding your niche and identifying your audience. How do you go about doing that? I'll start with Cassie.
Oh my gosh, that's such a multi-layered question. I feel like really when you're beginning as an author, even if your goal is to eventually self-publish, you should probably write what makes you the happiest to write, because no matter what form of publishing you take, self-pub or trad pub, there's going to be a period of learning in there, and that can be a slog. And so rather than sitting down and thinking like, how could I possibly be the next Brandon Sanderson? It might be better for you to what you enjoy doing the most so that you will write it the most quickly and get through those hurdles and learning how to write right off the bat. A lot of people, though, are just drawn to write what they like to read, though. And so it's a natural progression from like looking at what's on their Kindle to being all like, I would like to write an alien romance, and moving from there. But I think, too, though, certain types of writers have the kind of brain, like some people can get into something and they will just mine it for forever. And I really envy them. Other times, people need to hop around to keep their brains happy.
Yes.
But what
I am definitely one of those.
Yeah, me too, unfortunately. Like I wrote my fantasy romance series and that's all I got. But I endeavor to keep my brand promise that my books are high angst, high heat, and dark, even if I write a contemporary or even if I write maybe an alien romance or something one day, because that way at least there's some voicey vibe throughout everything so that people know what they're getting into when they read a Cassie Alexander book. I don't veer from like erotica to Amish romance, because that would just be people and I would need a different pen name.
My brain just broke slightly, so.
I mean, I just assume that the Amish romances are steamy.
No. So, I don't think so.
It's a lot of repression
There's a lot
there.
of money if you can write clean. I just can't.
Abby, you were talking to me a little bit about lit RPG and progression fiction versus heroic epics and finding your particular niche. How did you find your niche?
I mean, much like Cassie said, this is the stuff I love reading. This is the stuff I grew up reading, and I never stopped loving it, so I still write what I love. I mean, I don't, to me, like, finding the niche is the easy part, I guess.
Okay.
Marketing's the hard part.
I think marketing is very hard. Marketing is a job in and of itself, which is why when people are in traditional publishing, they have somebody to do it for them, and it's wonderful, and they get to get away with not having to do much besides show up at a signing or something like that. It must be great. It must be wonderful. It doesn't really help. It doesn't really work that way for the rest of us.
Only if they got like the best deal too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. One of the things I used to talk about with my students when I was teaching rhetoric was you have to know who your audience is. And that's really difficult in this time because the audience is fractured, the audience is split, the audience is everywhere. They're on Wattpad, they're on Royal Road, they're reading traditional magazines, they're reading online, they're reading Archive of Our Own. They're all over the place, and trying to find your people, your tribe, the people who are going to love your stuff is really, really hard. How do you get to know your audience? How do you find them and seek them out and say, hey, I have something that you are going to love? And Cassie, you've been doing a lot of work on marketing, I've been reading your little blog entries about this, and it's been mind-blowing. How do you find your people?
Thank you, ladies, for your patience. Sorry about that. But back to finding an audience, though.
Okay.
So it is, I don't want to say really, let me go high level and then I'll go deep level.
Okay.
So in a perfect world, you would have your project finished and you would imagine your perfect reader for it. So I was at 20 books this past week, which is why I have this head cold. I swear to God, it's not COVID. I've tested frequently. But a lot of the people there were talking about, like, you write cozy mysteries. And so their ideal reader was like a 73-year-old woman who knits and has a dog, So you can get pretty granular about who you imagine your ideal reader to be. And then once you reach that point, then you would go to places where you think that you would find your ideal reader, like, cozy mystery groups on Facebook, maybe knitting groups on Facebook, maybe women who like books about dogs on Facebook. And then also, you do have the ability on Facebook ads, if you're willing to spend a little bit of money behind the scenes, and it doesn't even have to be a lot, but you can kind of A/B test like your blurbs or your covers.
Yeah.
People who have the same interests, like, do like people who like knitting want to see your book, or people who like dogs want to see your book. But then after that, though, I went to this really good talk a while back. And I heard in that talk that Anna Huang, whose romances have been incredibly popular on Amazon, when she was just starting out, she has a background in marketing, and she went and got 1,000 ARC readers. And like the traditional thought about getting ARC readers is that perhaps you should be stingy with your ARCs, or you want to make sure that each of those ARC readers is like a super quality reviewy person and stuff, which I get. But then I mentioned that to an Apple rep, and she was like, oh yeah, TreadPub people send out 1,000 ARCs all the time. And so I was like, well, who do I want to be? I want to be Anna Huang, right? I want that level of success. And I want to be, I want to have the equivalent level of success of somebody who has a big TreadPub push behind them. So that was when I hired a friend to be my PA solely for that project. And I'll be really upfront about numbers here if you ask, because that's my MO. So I paid her $30 and we created a Google form and put that Google form on every single Facebook group that I thought it would apply. Like, I had some hot art of my characters, had my premise and my blurb. I put it up there. And then basically everyone who got to the bottom of the form, I accepted as an ARC reader. And I know some of them were maybe bummed on the far side because then they realized it wasn't as exclusive as they had hoped. But at the same time, having like 1,000, like I think of that 1,000, I got like 500 or 600 reviews, but having like 500 or 600 people review your book in the first 2 weeks it comes out,
that's enormous.
The word of mouth that you can get from that, like not all of them were Amazon reviews, many of them were just Goodreads reviews, but like still. And I think that was really helped ensure the success of that series. So the other thing I did when I did that Google form is I made it just complicated enough that somebody had to invest time in it to fill it out. And I was super upfront about my brand promise up at the top. Like I was like, I write hot stuff. I often write hot stuff with queer people. There are not queer people in this book, but I need you to know that because I don't want you to be surprised if you say on my ARC team going forward. Like I had people check boxes that said that knew I was going to deliver pornography. Because I didn't want people to be like, how did this get here? Nah, you know, and 1-star me for something that they signed on board for. But it turned out really good. And I think it's helped propel that series to be successful. So.
Yeah. And Abby, same question to you. How do you identify your audience? Because you obviously have found success through Wattpad and Royal Road. And those are two very different venues from traditional publishing. And you were telling me before the podcast that there's a bit of a gender divide between the two of them. And I find this very interesting. How do you find your audience in places that are non-traditional spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like those are both web serial platforms, especially Royal Road. So they're kind of geared to like posting a chapter on a regular basis, like chapter by chapter, and building an audience that way. The audience is interactive. They can comment. They can like talk to each other. So it's kind of like community building. And yes. And you know, like to me, that's a lot of fun, both as a reader and a writer. So I just wanted to try it out. It was a little bit of a test for me, but it worked out really, really well. So it turns out I actually love doing it. I love web serials. I love the fact that I can just talk to my readers right away and they can talk to each other. They'll get on each other's cases, you know, I get the instant feedback. So I've been in critique groups before all this, and critique groups are other writers. They're very serious other writers, and they're not really reading for fun. They're the vibe is just different. And so like whereas on Wattpad and Royal Road, a number of the readers are young. Like you'll get full on 11-year-olds reading your work. I'd actually will say I don't write for 11-year-olds. So when one showed up, I was like, oh boy.
Yes.
But yeah, you know, people that are just from all walks of life, from many different countries, a lot of them don't have access to Amazon, or they don't have access to libraries. They're reading because it's a little bit of a forbidden thing for them, and they want anyway. So you just get like some very interesting people reading your work. And
I had a very similar experience when I was working in fan fiction, and I was basically doing a chapter a week, and I had just that enormous gratification of people responding immediately. It's a serotonin hit when people respond immediately. They have questions, they have comments, and then you're responding back to them, and you are building that community. And I was really hoping to leverage some of that community. Some of those people did come with me into the other books, but a lot of them were sort of wedded to the IP that I was writing about at that point in time. So being able to serialize your own stuff in a space like Wattpad or Royal Road sounds very fulfilling.
Yeah, it definitely is. Although I'm definitely gonna give Cassie's idea a lot of thought. That's smart.
All right. So we've talked about audience now, building your work now. Now, something I did with my first 3 books with Edda Earth was I did write it all up front, the entire series. I did the Netflix model, and I was going to try to sell this entire thing traditional publishing and it went over with a resounding flop. And I said, screw this. I want to be published before I'm 40. I'm going to put this out on Amazon, and I had beautiful covers for them, and I released them very close to each other, the sort of the Netflix model as opposed to the traditional TV model. Which works better, the Netflix model where you just dump it all on people, or traditional TV model where you write it gradually over time and deploy it gradually, and you build your audience over time that way? Or is there not a dichotomy between the two? And I'm going to ask Cassie that first.
I would say that it kind of depends on what your publishing goals are. And if you are able to sit on a book for that long, having done that, I know it's super hard. But also too, it also depends on whether you are publishing wide or in KU. In KU, everybody talks about Amazon's algorithm and how like you get a nice organic boost from it for the first 30 days and then a little less at 60 days. And then they talk about the 90-day cliff a lot. And so that's why a lot of people who are in KU, which is the version of Amazon where your ebooks are exclusive to them and then you get paid per page read, those people quick release because they want people to keep going through their books so they can keep accruing those page reads and that money. But on the other vendors, though, because I'm a wide author, I feel like they respect the length of your pre-order more. Like for some reason, it seems to me like on Apple or Barnes & Noble, it seems like the longer your pre-order is, the more real their algorithm considers your book to be. I don't know what that's about, but it's nice. And so, but ultimately, I would just do what you can do and what you feel comfortable with. I just really hesitate to say there's one true path to do anything because there's just super not.
There really isn't. No, I'm looking for opinions here and what has worked for you.
Yeah, I mean,
and Abby, same question. You were nodding and smiling about having written it all up front, and so I feel like we've gone down a similar path.
Yes, yeah, I call it the insane path or the insanity path. Like, I don't know if I'll do it again because I feel like you have to leverage a lot of years in your lifetime if you're writing a big epic series, and you're not releasing it. So yes. So on the one hand, I really recommend it for a good story, for like building a very cohesive story. Because if you publish as you go, you can end up in like a George R. R. Martin situation where the story kind of teeters, it becomes the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and then you're constantly trying to shore up the direction it was going in, and it's going to become more and more unwieldy. Whereas if you write it all beforehand, you can retroactively go back and fix all the problems in the first few books again and again. Yeah. And so I did that, and I consider my series a complete work of art. It's 6 books, over 1 million words, and I'm very proud of it. I know that it's a good series, and the readers who get to the end of it certainly agree. Now, the beginning, it's always going to have problems. But I find that, like, most series, some of my favorite series, they all have kind of a little bit of problems in the beginning, especially if you're setting up such a massive world.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to be said for writing it all before publishing it and focusing solely on that work of art. But as for rapid release, I do think a lot of that is driven by algorithms. I think that there's kind of like a rapid release culture going on right now. That's a lot of it is driven by that Amazon algorithm.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that does seem to be, as Cassie said, that helps with your visibility. People are trying to game the visibility system basically because they have to. So, yeah, everyone's rapid releasing. There's a lot of pressure on authors to write faster and more and faster and more. Yeah.
Faster and more. Volume and velocity, as my boss at HP used to say. Volume and velocity. Yeah. That actually brings me to a question I was going to address later, but that was how often to publish. You often hear that people who make it big in self-publishing are the ones who can turn out multiple books a year and have a back catalog of 15 or 20 titles deep. That was one of the things that I was talking about with another self-published author, and she actually is in the position where she has 15 or 20 titles, and so she has that deep backbench, and more power to her. I'm not there yet. Cassie, you obviously have a deep backbench, and you're making it deeper progressively every time I turn around. is this the goal? Is this the plan? Is it to make the bench so deep that there's always something more for somebody to read once they found you? Or
I definitely hope so. But hearkening back to the branding thing earlier, I definitely wrote some books that were like one-offs and larks that made me happy at the time, but aren't really functioning as like a part of the machine. There's this one romance author, Elena Johnson, and she has this metaphor that she likes in some of her books about writing about like some books are donkeys, some books are racehorses, and it's better to put your money behind your racehorse books. You can always like change the cover on a donkey, but chances are you're not going to magically make that a best-selling book. So while I do have a backlist, not all of it is performing as much as I would like it to be. Obviously, though, that's the goal, to have a deep enough backlist and to have be diversified enough. And for you as an author to have the ability to recognize where trends are going and how to keep marketing it now that things keep coming up like TikTok or like discrete covers or like, fancy dust jackets and stuff like that. Keep your books fresh to go with the times. I think like every author I know has recovered their books like 3 times in the past like 5 years.
Oh my God. I feel like now I need to catch up.
Well, I feel like you kind of have to. And a lot of people just do that because then it makes your book seem like it's a new book project, especially when you are doing like Amazon ads to it. Then people feel like they haven't seen it before. And maybe you use a different blurb or a different hook. And all of a sudden they're interested in clicking it. And this is the cover that draws them in. So having a backlist is wonderful. Having a backlist that makes you money is wonderful, but you do have to tend to your backlist. You can't just let it lie follow, or else your cover trends will get off. Maybe even your title trends will get off. And your blurb might get old. Maybe you have something that's in dual person POV and you don't mention that in your blurb, but that's hot right now, so you should, that sort of thing.
Okay. Interesting. So there's a lot of there's lots of trend analysis that you do. And I find it fascinating, and I don't have the background to be able to get into it with you, unfortunately. I would love to hear more, but I'm going to bop over to Abby and ask her. You have a 6 title deep series that has is this the one that lets you move into traditional publishing off of Wattpad and Royal Road, or is it a different series that lets you move into the traditional space?
Well, this is it. Yeah, I got an offer from Podium. So Podium is a kind of mid-size, newer publisher. They call themselves an indie publisher. They are not Big 5, although I think they're seeking Big 5 distribution and so forth. They're really a nifty publisher. I like them a lot. And they're taking risks, unlike a lot of the Big 5. So yeah, and I like that about them. So, it's great to be with them. But yeah, it's a little bit of people call it a hybrid model where they kind of give the author a little more freedom and leeway than a traditional Big 5 publisher would do.
Okay.
They're indie-ish.
That's it. And that's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a specific follow-up question, which is, my previous experience with indie publishers has been that they expect you to do a lot of the marketing footwork yourself. Do you find that the Podium supports you a little bit better than other independent publishers, or are you finding yourself doing some of the legwork yourself?
Honestly, no, they're very supportive that way. They are running ads for me. They are doing, they funded the covers, the audiobooks, and
nice.
Yes, so yeah, I could always give you some gripes. Part of it is that my books are not the usual fare that they're used to. So they mostly specialize in lit RPG. And and also progression fantasy, which mine is, but mine's offbeat. Mine is not your typical progression fantasy. It's dark, and a lot of them are kind of more lighthearted. So, and mine's sci-fi, a lot of them are fantasy. So it's something where I think that they're just not used to marketing that particular weird thing.
That's fair. And a lot of marketing comes down to being able to have that experience and have that knowledge of where the trends are and where the audience is. And yeah, if they don't have that necessarily, then it is a harder road for them to go along. So yeah. This is something, going wide and versus going narrow. This is something that Cassie talks about a lot on her blog. Going wide has advantages and going narrow has other advantages. Going narrow is very easy. It's very easy to put a book on Amazon and just push the button and you're done. And you can, it's one venue for distribution and it's all your eggs in one basket and it's easy. It's simple. But going wide requires a lot of mental investment, a lot of keeping track of multiple eggs in multiple baskets in places that you didn't even know the baskets could even exist. So talk to me a little bit about going wide, because I know this is what you've been doing for the past year to year and a half, and it has been just, again, mind-blowing to read about.
Yeah, so first off, for anybody listening, the blog that Deborah's talking about is totally private, so you guys can't watch it. Sorry.
Oh, well.
But Deborah has seen the sausage get made. Yeah, basically in 2021, I decided to nuke my old career, which had been some trad published, some half-heartedly self-published stuff. In November 2021, I nuked it from orbit and restarted everything. I decided to be wide at that time because I still have a day job. So I still have normal money coming in, so I didn't need to put all my eggs into Amazon's basket in the hope that if I pull the lever, they will give me a lot of money. I have a little FOMO about that because I know that certain romances in certain genres that I sell do quite well in KU, but at the same time, I'm a grown-up and I wouldn't feel comfortable putting all of my ability to earn money into one basket. Amazon is, every once in a while, they ban people. You'll be scrolling through TikTok or Instagram and there'll be some pretty author in tears saying, Amazon banned my account. Please yell at them so I can get it back. I need the money for rent. And I just never want that to be me. And I'm not making fun of those people. Those things are tragic, especially too, because Amazon does that a lot with bots. They've actually banned really famous authors. Those people have much easier recourse, though, than the people who have to cry on Instagram. So,
yeah.
So that said, it is a slight pain in the butt to get started wide, especially if you do have a backlist. Because, I was having to upload 10 or 15 different titles on 5 different vendors. So it does take work. But then once things are up there, it's fairly set it and forget it. I don't really have to touch those files all that much. I do try to participate in different promotions that assorted vendors offer. You probably know on Amazon, you've got the ability when you're in KU to set your books for free for a week. That's the push, or 5 days, every 90 days. But Kobo has something similar to that. If you ask to be on the promotions tab, Barnes & Noble does as well. If you ask to be on their promotions tab, Google Play lets you come up with your own coupons in their back end. All of the other vendors make it way more easy to change your price too than Amazon does. Because frequently you have to write them nice notes about can I please have my price changed to free to price match all my other things. And then they'll send you an email back that's we have discretion for everything, maybe in 72 hours. They always wind up doing it, but they just have to pull that little we're still in charge of you, huh? Type thing. So right now the majority of my income is still from Amazon, unfortunately. But I do see myself getting traction on the other vendors. And so, yeah, that's where I would like to go. And also, too, I'm doing more stuff with my store and direct sales, which is another way for me to keep all my money and all of the data from the people who buy from me, which is super exciting. Because even all the vendors across the board keep 30%. Whereas if somebody buys an ebook from me, I get the full value of it, And then I have the opportunity to, on my store, to offer a 30% off coupon. And I look like I'm being all generous. And in essence, I'm still making the same money that I would have made if they had bought that book on Amazon. But only now I have their data so that I can email them and say, if you liked that book, you might like this other book too. So there's some forethought that goes into it and some hustle. And that's probably way more information than you wanted, Deborah. Sorry.
No, this is great. This is wonderful. I recently had somebody who was interested in my books reach out to me and go, well, I don't want to buy the ebook, but your books cost too much money on Amazon. And I'm just saying, they're going, I make 5 cents a book. Really? That's all I make, because
On your
these are they're paperback and they're big.
Yeah.
So they're not the nice, neat little traditional published 300-page novels. They are big honkers.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I can't set it any lower than it is.
Yeah.
Other than maybe putting in a push for it to be free, but that's never going to happen with the softback. So
the for paperbacks too, that's so tricky. And Ingram is such a dick about math. If you look at their back end, they're the people who you can send your books to, so it'll be represented all over the world theoretically. But then they want they want you to incorporate their wholesale discount into your price, which is, I find, bizarre. So that's difficult. What was I going to say about the paperbacks though? Yeah, I try to make at least $3 to $4 to $5 on all my paperbacks. Just because I do want to make some money from those. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. If you make a collection of stuff and you put it on Amazon, say you bundle up 3, 4, or 5 of your books, part of the problem is that the biggest Amazon, the highest price that Amazon will give you royalties on is $9.99. So if you put, like, let's just say for math's sake, $4 or $5 books together, you want to charge $20 for that book bundle. You can do that on Kobo. You can do that on Google Play. You can do that on Apple, and they will give you all the money. So they'll give you 70% of that $20. But Amazon will be all like, no, here's your 70% of $9.99, which kind of, yeah.
Oof. That's rough.
Yeah.
Oh. We've talked about transitioning from indie to hybrid, although if Abby wants to talk some more about that, we can totally do so, because this is a fascinating subject for me, because you've had experience in both. And what would you say the biggest advantage or the biggest nice surprise you've had out of that experience of changing from being solely indie to being hybrid?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I love the fact that, so I've never done an audiobook before, and they're taking care of it for me, and just being able to hear that, get the files, and I'm just like, oh wow, hear the.
I feel like a real author. I'm a real girl.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, for a 6-book, million-word series, that's a lot of money if you're indie to pay for audiobooks for. Yes.
Yeah, it really, really is. I had somebody reach out to me saying, well, I would love to be the voice of your audiobooks. I will only charge you this amount per hour that I'm working on it. I'm like, yes, that's nice. And you did a wonderful promo for me, but I cannot afford you. So, yeah. Which of your many upcoming or recent projects do you most want to talk about? Obviously, you've got Majority and the 6 books that are out or coming out via this. Do you have anything new coming out after that you would like to talk about, or that you can talk about?
I mean, I'll just say, like, I'm busy writing other stuff, and I'm working on a new series, but I am planning to serialize it before publication, just like I did with Torth. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it'll be on Royal Road at some point.
Can you give us any tidbits about what this might be about? Is it going to be sci-fi again? Are you going to go more fantasy?
Fantasy this time. Yeah. So I always like to do some kind of crazy, like, I guess, social commentary going on with my books. Like, Torth is very much about kind of collective groupthink, the dangers of, like, peer pressure online, so Twitter mobs, Reddit mobs, that sort of thing, and that's kind of what I was really drilling into with Torth. And this new one, it's kind of a critique of the current job market in Western world, sort of like the enshittification of jobs and, as they say, bullshit jobs. So it's kind of like what I've got going on is magic. It's there's a hard magic system involved, and magic has become bureaucratized and inshitified, so it's very corporate. And so I've got a young upstart that just starts like reverse engineering magic and doing it his own way, and causing a lot of problems for the bureaucracy.
Okay, this sounds fascinating. This sounds like it's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be fun, yeah.
Yeah, so are you doing the insane route of writing it all up front and then serializing it, or are you releasing it a little bit at a time as you write it?
Well, sadly, I wish I was such a fast writer that I could do it all up front before releasing it, but I am not the fastest writer. I don't have that speed demon ability, which some of these web serial writers, by the way, really do. Yeah. Like there's one guy that has written an 11 million word series, and he writes something like 60,000 words per day or some ludicrous amount.
I have done that. It's been a while since I've been able to do that, but I have done that.
This person does it consistently and has been doing it for like 10 years, and people theorize that it's 2 people, but anyway, who knows? But I don't know.
Oh my god, wild.
Yeah, but for me, I can't do that. I'm not that kind of a speed demon. I do tend to rewrite sometimes. Like I'll go back and be like, well, this whole structure isn't working. Let me scrap that and start again. So anyway, so yeah, I will write as much of it as I can before Torth plays out, which the final book of Torth will be coming out in 2025. So
oh wow,
yeah,
so they're coming out. Time here.
I do have some time. Yeah, they come out every 4 months. So there'll be 3 books coming out this coming year, and then the last 2 will come out in 2025. Yep. So
outstanding.
I hope I'll have a lot of my new series written by then.
Oh yes, this will be awesome. I can't wait to hear more about it, and then you can come back on the podcast and tell me more about it then too. It'll be wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah,
Cassie, you do so much stuff. What of your many boiling pots on your stove that's overflowing would you like to talk about most? Would you like to direct people to read? And I will point out that Cassie's stuff is very hot. It's very steamy. This is maybe not what Deborah's readers are going to be looking for, but maybe they will. They just don't know it yet.
Probably the thing that makes the most sense to send people to would be my Bend Her, Break Her, and Make Her series, which is a dark retelling of Beauty and the Beast. It's a high heat but slow burn dual POV romance with a very sheltered princess who wants to learn magic, but her society won't let her, and a beast mage who knows that she is destined to kill him, but who has to teach her how to do magic. So
okay, yeah, that sounds like it must be amazing.
And all 3 books are out, and people seem to like them. So if you go and you cruise a review or 2 and you're like, oh, that's my jam, that's what I would be into. As for what I'm doing next, I actually wrote an alternate universe version of those books set in a contemporary world, which has no magic, with vaguely the same characters, but with a lot of the same tropes. And the first book of that should be coming out in June, and it's called Take Her. But it's a contemporary novel, totally different. Age gap, contemporary romance, mafia romance type thing. Very dark.
Sounds like fun again. I love the fact that you will change perspectives, change settings, change this, change that. It keeps you going and keeps you more alive and more interested in your work.
Yeah. This is my first contemporary novel, so I'm really interested in seeing how it goes. I'm going to give a contemporary trilogy a try. And I'm hoping that does go well. I'm hoping to kind of create like an Ouroboros where people who like the contemporary one, that's contemporary romance is just such a vastly huger pond. So maybe they finish that series and they want to relive the vibe, so that maybe they come to the fantasy romance version, and vice versa is my hope. So we'll see.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything that anybody would like to talk about that I haven't asked you about? Abby, have I not scratched anything open that needs to be talked about?
I guess not. I mean, I will say, like, if the listeners are writers, there's kind of like a pipeline, like Royal Road to Amazon, where a lot of authors right now are jumping on that. And I don't know how long that gold rush is going to last, but there's definitely I see a kind of a feeding frenzy going on that website right now, and they just launched an app. And so yeah, I see like Podium, Athon Books, and a whole lot of other publishers kind of are making offers to authors on there that have, 2,000 followers or so. So
Interesting.
yeah, I'm definitely seeing that.
And something I completely forgot to ask Cassie about is the fact that I have spotted her work over on Storyloom, which is an interactive fiction site where, this is another way of engaging with your audience or finding a new audience. How did that go for you?
So that's a really interesting experience. And I'm sorry I sound weird now. I just stuffed a cough drop in my mouth.
You sound great. You sound fine.
So my current editor at Storyloom is an old-time fan of mine who found me through my newsletter and asked me to come into their beta program. Storyloom is run by Pixelberry, who are the same people who do the Choices app, which is a really popular app. And so Storyloom lets you create like your own decision points for these characters using their assets. So I turned Venture into a graphic novel over there using my own art that I had AI generated and my own words. But now I'm actually taking some of my other books and adding choices to them to give to them. For me, I view... One second, sorry. I view every like different app as kind of like a separate reader bubble. I know a lot of people are afraid if they load their books onto Radish or Wattpad or Royal Road or whatever that you'll be cannibalizing readers from other locations. But I don't actually feel like that's the case. I feel like people who want to read on their apps are going to read on their apps, and people who want to read on Amazon are going to read on Amazon. So anything you can do to get your IP out as many places as possible is going to make it easier for you to reach people. So I'm excited to see my new book with them, Dragon's Captive, comes out. I think they're releasing the first 2 chapters 2 days from now on Wednesday. And I'm excited to see how it does. As they've been opening up their beta program, we've gotten like more and more readers and playing the games and stuff. So that's been a fun experience.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right. Thank you both for having been on the show. It was a wonderful conversation. Next week on Shining Moon, we're going to be talking to Katrina Archer, a cli-fi and science fiction writer and editor of the magazine Little Blue Marble. Katrina is going to kick off our environmental reading series, which is stacked deep with fascinating people and important discussions. Thank you all for your time, and we are out.